If you love space science and astronomy news, check out my 60-second short videos every weekday. In case you missed them, here's all the daily videos in one cut. There was a ton of great stories this week, but of course there's a ton more out there just waiting for you to discover them on your own. Two lunar lander missions are set to launch to the moon on one rocket this week. Firefly Aerospace is sending Blue Ghost, and Japan's iSpace will have its Resilience lander on board the Falcon 9 launch vehicle. The rocket's scheduled to launch from Cape Kennedy Space Center on Wednesday at 1:11 a.m. EST. Blue Ghost will touch down about 45 days after launch and spend 2 weeks doing lunar science before snapping a picture of the lunar sunset and shutting itself down for the cold lunar night. Resilience will arrive at the moon about 5 months after launch and land in the northern Mare Frigoris region of the moon. Along with other science, it will deploy a small rover called Tenacious to collect a sample of the lunar regolith. iSpace is incorporating the knowledge they gained from the Hokuto R mission, which made it into lunar orbit but failed to successfully land on the lunar surface, a notoriously tricky feat to accomplish. The cadence of moon missions this year is crazy. There are at least 3 more landers planned to head to the moon in 2025. I wanted to take a minute today to talk about the fires in Los Angeles and Southern California. I live in the affected area for the fires, but I'm lucky to say that we have been safe so far, with the closest fire only coming within a few miles of us. We have several friends who've lost their homes, and of course there are thousands more people in the same terrible situation, along with a tragic few who've lost literally everything. For other friends, their children no longer have schools to attend, and various other facilities are just gone. So while we're on the space theme a little bit, here's some satellite images of the smoke from the fires and to give you a little bit of a sense of the scope of what's been happening. And if you have the means, I want to encourage you to support people in Southern California who desperately need it right now. The following are a couple of the organizations that we've supported ourselves. There's many more that you can find with a simple Google search. World Central Kitchen is providing meals to everyone that needs them and does amazing work in disaster zones all around the world. The California Fire Foundation provides financial support to affected residents and also supports surviving families of fallen firefighters. Fortunately, I don't think we have any of those in this incident so far. Emergency responders have been doing an incredible job keeping us safe, and they deserve our support year-round. Finally, near and dear to my heart is the Caltech JPL Relief Fund. As you may know, I worked at JPL for 10 years, and this fund has been set up to help those associated with Caltech and JPL that have been affected by the fires. I've heard that several hundred people from those two institutions have lost their homes, and many others are severely affected. So please do what you can. I know not everybody can afford to donate. There are other ways that you could help if you're in the area. You can stop by and volunteer. You can donate clothes, toys, all kinds of things. So help in any way you can. I know that people will really appreciate it. Rocket launches are always fun to watch, and there's a feast right now. Last night, a Falcon 9 successfully carried the 2 lunar landers that we talked about in Monday's video into orbit. The video from space was breathtaking, and both Firefly Space's Blue Ghost and iSpace's Resilience landers are now on their way to lunar orbit and eventually the lunar surface. Tonight at 10 p.m. Pacific, Blue Origin will have a second attempt at the first ever launch of its New Glenn 1 rocket. The rocket's carrying a test payload and will have a lift capacity that will make it a competitor to SpaceX's Falcon Heavy launch vehicle. Speaking of SpaceX, the 7th test flight of Super Heavy Starship Combo is scheduled for tomorrow at 2 p.m. Pacific. This will test the new Starship Block 2 design that has several improvements over the Block 1 design used on previous tests. These include changes to the forward flaps to make them less susceptible to heat damage, and various changes to fuel lines, avionics, and more. We should see a booster catch and the deployment of 10 dummy Starlink satellites if everything goes according to plan. There's exciting news in the hunt for extrasolar planets capable of supporting life. NASA's Pandora mission is one step closer to launch later this year after the team announced today the completion of the spacecraft bus. One way to examine the atmospheres of exoplanets is to wait for them to pass in front of their star and then examine the starlight that has passed through the atmosphere. Astronomers can then measure the presence of a variety of chemical compounds and determine if an exoplanet would have the ability to support life. Unfortunately, variations in the direct light from the star itself can kind of mix up the measurements. The other problem is that busy telescopes like JWST can't observe the same planet for long periods of time due to heavy demands on their schedule. Pandora will help solve both these problems. Because it's dedicated to only examining exoplanet atmospheres, it can stare at the same system for 24 hours at a time. Also, Pandora will measure both the spectrum of light from the star and the exoplanet separately, so astronomers will be able to clean up the data from the planet. Pandora will launch later this year and expects to observe at least 20 exoplanets, 10 times each, for at least 24 hours per observation. What you're looking at in this image are belts and disks of ice and rock around nearby stars. Known as exocomet belts, they're similar to our own Kuiper belt and orbit far from their stars, giving temperatures of minus 250 to minus 150 Celsius. That means most compounds, including water, will be frozen, so the astronomers are looking at the ice reservoirs of these star systems. Given the importance of water to life, these are super interesting observations. The exocomets themselves may be anywhere from 1 kilometer to several hundred kilometers in diameter, and by colliding with each other, they produce vast amounts of the small millimeter-sized reflective pebbles that we see in these images. The experiment is called REASONS, the Resolved ALMA and SMA observations of nearby stars, and uses the 66-element ALMA radio telescope in the Atacama Desert of Chile and the 8-element SMA array in Hawaii. As you can see from the images, the exocometary belts come in a wide variety of shapes, from rings and multiple rings to disks. Astronomers are hoping to follow up on these fascinating observations with time on JWST and next-generation radio telescopes that will help them examine these exocomet belts in even more detail. This research is published in the journal Astronomy and Astrophysics.